And those are conversations I have all the time where I'm in a situation and I'm like, hey, listen, I'm sorry that my son is behaving this way, but he's on the spectrum. And they would be like, well, I didn't know that. And I would say, well, I'm not saying you should have. I'm just saying he is. And I'm telling you now, and that's why this is happening. And I understand that you're confused. Let me explain to you. So I thought that was just so heartwarming. And I felt like just those two things were worth me writing it,
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Living the Next Chapter. I have a guest with me who wrote a book to help people. And there it is. There's the book. Autism with a Side of Sushi. I've got Kuri Yasuno with me today, a wonderful author, a mother who's coming with some great information for us for children, her child, for example, living life on the spectrum, and helping parents and helping people like me to be a better uncle to my niece and being able to apply great things to our lives so that we can be an ally and help. Kuri, welcome to the podcast. Hello, how are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, okay. So I've listened to some other podcast episodes you've been on, so much wisdom and knowledge comes from a great heart. And I'm excited to have our conversation today. It's going to be fun.
Me too.
Yeah, very good. So can you tell us a little bit about how you came to be here in America? Wow. How did you end up here? What happened?
Oh, well, we're going way back.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah. So my dad used to work for a Japanese company and he retired. But anyway, so they had moved him to the States to work in an American branch in 1980. So when I was 5 years old, we moved here for his work to Long Island, and that's where we hung our hat.
So when we talked earlier, and the reason I kind of went back there was you mentioned a story about when you were young, and it's lunchtime. All the kids gather for lunch. Yeah. Everybody opens their lunchbox, and there's a lot of American food and other nationalities of food. And you open your lunchbox to something that's normal for you and your family every day. It's like, there's nothing different about this. What happened in that moment?
Well, so, a friend of mine was like, don't yuck anybody else's yums, right? It's a funny expression. But so, in Japan, we eat rice and that's our food, right? So there's a thing called onigiri, which a lot of children and adults take as a snack or a lunch. And it's it's a rice ball, kind of very similar to sushi, but in a different shape. And it's a ball with seaweed around it. And inside is salmon or I don't know, fish eggs or vegetables or pickled this or pickled that. And then they're very portable, and it's like an American sandwich, because in Japan, we don't really, at the time, it wasn't sandwiches. You made little rice balls and you bring it to lunch, and it was seaweed, which I guess in America was not a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or Cheetos.
Yeah, Cheetos is. And so the kids around you, how did they respond to seeing you having this?
So they were really grossed out. So that's how that's the analogy that I was using for the basis of the book. So when I first came to the States and I was eating this foreign food, the kids were really grossed out by it, and I think it's because they'd never seen it before. I was pretty much the only Japanese kid other than my older brother in the school at the time. Maybe there was another family. So, they'd never seen it. They freaked out. They're like, oh my God, ew, that's sushi. And ew, do you eat seaweed that's from the ocean? And then what, do you eat raw fish? Really gross. And if you remember, in the 80s, it was gross. People didn't know about it, maybe late 70s, early 80s. And it's only, in the past couple of decades that everybody started to appreciate sushi and love sushi. And we go out to sushi all the time. And when we say sushi, people are like, oh, let's go here. Or there's one in every food court in every mall in America, I'm assuming. I don't
Yeah.
know. And so it became so common and so natural. But I remember in the beginning, it was so icky, right? And so unknown and foreign. And that was the basis of the book that I wrote, which is the Autism with a Side of Sushi, being that my son is on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And that is still kind of a foreign idea to people that are unaware or not really touched by it in their lives, right?
Yeah.
So maybe if we could make autism similar to sushi and have people who are unaware, think it's foreign, think it's new, don't know much about it, and turn it into something that is very generalized and everybody can talk about it and everybody knows about it, then everybody will appreciate it. Just like I'm hoping people appreciate Japanese food, Chinese food, whatever food is new and awkward in the beginning, right? So that was the process behind all of that.
So that's exactly why I wanted to go back to the beginning, because I can just picture this lunchtime thing unfolding. And like you talked about, to go from a reactive state where people don't know how to react or overreact or whatever that is when they see your food, the same parallel with autism when people are reactive and they don't know what to do. They, again, overreact, underreact, whatever that is.
Or just don't know how to react.
Don't have no concept.
Yeah.
And then get to the point where this is part of our regular conversation, that we can be more of an ally, more accepting, more aware, and understand our role as a community to support parents, to support children, and those around us who don't even feel safe enough to open their lunchbox in public, right? Because they're afraid that how they're going to be judged or misunderstood.
Yes.
Right. So that's amazing. So I'm very happy about that. So I love the parallel, and I just love how you've presented this as a way to start a conversation. So let's talk a little bit about your experiences as a mother, with your son, and maybe some of the maybe a little bit of the early days, and maybe some of where you're at today.
Yeah. So when I first, Daniel was my first kid. So I have two now. I have Daniel and the younger one, who's 2 years younger. So I was a first time mom. I uninformed, right? I didn't know anything. I didn't know when milestones were. I mean, I just knew what I was told at the doctor's office, right? And so we did our shots and we did this, we did that. And then, we had this one toy and he would be like really focused on this one toy all the time. Right. And I would be like, my son is so advanced. He can focus on he can tune out the world and focus. Whereas all these other kids are like always messing with their moms and trying to get them to pay attention, whatever. Right. So, I mean, what do I know? Mm-hmm. And then a lot of other things, right? Where my son is so creative. He loves music and can really just sit down with this one toy that plays music all the time. And then I was talking to my sister-in-law, who's a pediatrician, and she was like, oh, my daughter doesn't have a very good nap routine. She can't fall asleep or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. My son doesn't have a problem napping, but he doesn't seem to answer to his name, and he doesn't point to things, right? And she was like, that might be something you want to get checked out. So I was like, what do you mean? I thought my kid was, but obviously I had no idea because I had nothing to compare it to. And then I did get him checked out, and he was diagnosed with PDD-NOS, which is it's like a catch-all for all delays. And then we sort of had this inkling that there was something that wasn't meeting up with the other kids, only because, after being a mom and then joining moms groups and then now being able to see other kids in the same age group, I was able to see the differences. Right. Mm-hmm. Because if I'm at home all by myself, I'm unaware. I have no idea what's going on. Yeah. And then later we were given the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. But as a mom and a first time mom, I was like, what is this thing? Right. Like was he going to grow a third head? What second head? So like I just didn't know. And I was freaking out. Right. And so I was doing all kinds of research and like, because they get very serious with you. They're like, well, your son has autism spectrum disorder. And so I did a lot of reading, and all I could find was information on very famous and successful people like Einstein or Temple Grandin, who was amazing. Mm-hmm. But, what are the chances that like every kid with autism is going to be the super famous, amazing genius, right? Mm-hmm. So I kind of was looking for like, where are the everyday kids? Like, what are they doing? Is there a kid that's going to make it to high school and do okay? Like, is there a kid that's going to like, do I send them to a special education school? There's really nothing that I could find. And also because I was so new to the diagnosis, like I didn't know there was a community of people that I could reach out to until I found them, but it took a while, right? So you're alone, kind of like, even when you're like just a first-time mom, you're alone and you don't know what you're doing until you find a mom group or a neighbor or a friend or a play group or whatever. Mm-hmm. It took a while. And then once I created my community, it became a lot easier because whether they had a child on the spectrum or not, I could bounce ideas off of them, right? And I could ask them, like, does your kid do this? No. Okay, maybe I need to get that checked out. So there was, a lot of comfort in finding a group of women or men or parents really that were able to share the journey with me, regardless of what the kids were developmentally, right? Most of the kids in this mom group ended up being very typical. I mean, Daniel's the only one on the spectrum in this group. But again, you had somebody to ask. And then once we were given, once we went to the doctor gave us names of people. And then, we created Team Daniel. Right? Like the doctors, the speech therapist, the OT, the county sent people, finding out what they told us about programs. So like once you like get one foot in and you start asking the right questions, then you can get connected and you can get your network. Mm-hmm. I was just very fortunate because we are in this, very forward community. I live right outside DC. So there's so many people here that are in this field. There's doctors, there's specialists, there's therapists, and whereas that's not normally, normal. This might not be the case for someone somewhere else, right? And I was also lucky because I ended up stopping work to stay at home to just deal with all of this. So I had the time and I had the access, and there was like a big pool of people that I could reach. Now with the internet, it's different, right? You can, it's a little bit more of like a closer world. But back then when we went uphill both ways.
I always did. Yes. That's right. Yeah.
That's like the younger years. And then now, it's like, I have my systems in place, right? Like I can't tell anybody that it's going to be okay and it's going to work out and everything's going to be amazing and your kid's going to be so successful, because I don't know, right? I don't even know about my own kid. But what I do know is that like you get used to it, right? Even if the new problems are bigger or crazier or you've never had this issue before, you at least not you, me, I have set up systems, right? So like I have my therapist that I need to call if something happens, or like if it's just like a speech issue, I know, okay, I can contact this person because I've worked with them in the past. So I guess through the years, I have been very busy trying to create a network so that any new crisis or not crisis, hiccup or questions come up, I have a safety net and I can go back to them. And I think that has helped me sort of get here, and I think that happens naturally for all parents, right? Because like, obviously if your kid breaks your arm, you know where to go. But it's like that, except we have a unique specialized group of people that we can contact in certain situations.
So for a parent with a new diagnosis for their family member, don't try to do this alone. Don't try to search it all up yourself. Build community, right? Is what I'm hearing for sure.
Yes. And ask all kinds of questions for anybody. And do the coffee, like meet the mom that's like, oh, I know this lady who has a son on the spectrum. if you're feeling up to it, go talk to them, you know. If you're not, lock yourself in a room and rock back and forth in the dark. Like, if that's what you need to do that. Like, there is no rule, there's no guidebook, there's no, like, nobody's keeping score, you know, and saying, oh, this mom is not doing all the lunches, she needs an act. Like, nobody's doing that.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, do what you can do. Because there were days I would literally walk back and forth in a dark corner somewhere. And that was all I could do at that time. And that's okay, you know?
Wow. Okay. So bring us up to today then. Like, how are things now?
Yeah.
Maybe what are some of the new things that you're learning?
So, interestingly enough, I finished, I think, like the end of the book. It's like, and Daniel did sleepaway camp for a couple of weeks and it was a success. And he had his bar mitzvah that we thought was going to be a challenge, and it was a success. And then he started high school in this public high school with 600 kids in his grade, every grade.
Wow.
And it was a success. And so anything can happen, you can do it. It was like the end, right? And I was so excited and moving on. Well, it always is like this, right? It's like
yeah.
So anywhere that I could have ended my story, there's always something else that happens. And so, unfortunately, in his sophomore year, my son was terribly bullied by the kids in his public school. And so we had to move him, right? And it was a new and horrible and terrible experience for the whole family. But I think the saving grace was that we had people that we knew we could call, right? We had our doctor, therapist, you need to talk to this person, educational consultant, or like, who do I talk to about finding a new school? And then even dealing with the current school, you know, and the ramifications and all the fallout that had to take place. So, you know, then it was really bad. Like, I hated spring of this year. It was a horrible time. But then it goes up again, right? Because he's now in a new school that accepted him like 4 weeks before the end of the day, you know, before the last day of school, or 5 weeks or whatever. They were amazing. They like welcomed him with open arms. He made a couple friends already. He even like hung out with one last weekend, independently, you know. So now we're back on like okay, everything is sort of gradually working itself out, right? So I think what I've come to terms with is like, there's always going to be ups and downs. And like, as long as I know that there's another peak coming, like another time where everything is going to settle down, I can continue and like move forward and just push on. And so that's sort of where we are right now, where now we're in like a place where we can take an exhale. It's summertime. We finished the school in a new place. He made a couple of friends. And now we're looking forward to the next adventure of summer, right? Because with a kid on the spectrum, every day isn't exciting. You never know.
You just don't know.
Questions are going to be asked. You never know.
That's amazing. Okay, so Kuri, tell us a little bit about the book then too. So who is the book designed for? And, you know, what can a reader experience by going through the book?
Okay, so initially, I wanted to write a really lighthearted, like laugh out loud, funny book about all the crazy questions, you know, that I get, or all the crazy situations that we've had, right? So like one time we were in the ER and Daniel he hurt his hand and he was like, got there and all these people are in their beds, you know, on the top of his lungs, he was like, are you going to die? Mama, are these people going to die? Okay, well, they didn't think so until you mentioned it, but now they're thinking about it. So let's go, you know, just like really funny things, right? I wasn't trying to make fun of it, but sort of like, it's okay to laugh at it because some of the stuff is ridiculous. And so I tried to do that, but at the same time, it didn't work because as I was writing, I was like, oh, this, what happened is not funny. Or like, when I was reflecting on like all the thoughts that I had, I was like, this is not funny at all. So then it kind of ended up being a memoir of my experience. And I wrote it for a couple of different reasons. One, I wanted to write it for people like me who were looking for like this average, not even great mom who made it this far, right? Because I couldn't at the time find a person that I could talk to that was like not amazing and super creating Temple Grandins.
Exactly.
Right. And I wanted to be like, it's okay. You can be crazy like me and you can literally take a day and eat Cheetos all day. Right. And it's still going to be fine. You can do it.
Yeah.
That was like like anybody can do it. And then I wanted people to sort of learn what it was like on this side, so that when they meet somebody with an experience or with a connection to autism, then they can feel more comfortable talking about it, because really it's about talking about it, right? Like you find a new restaurant and you tell your friend and then they tell your friend, and then, that's sort of how information gets passed around. Right. And I feel like if a trusted source talks to you about autism, and then you mention that to another person and to another person, I feel like that's the kind of conversation that needs to happen organically to get to my goal of autism being like sushi. And so that it's not a guidebook, it doesn't tell you I'm not a doctor, I'm not a specialist. I just admitted to being like a terrible mom that's like figuring it out as it goes. Right.
Yeah.
I yell at them. I curse. I, don't feed them very well. But listen, we made it, and he's 16. And at this moment, we're happy. Yeah. Maybe we weren't happy in spring, but we are now in summer, and maybe we'll be falling apart again in November, but it'll be okay. So that was kind of the goal and the hope of the book.
And so you're hearing some responses from readers too, which is encouraging, right?
Yes. So then this unexpected thing happened where like, I guess it was the goal, right? So like a person that I actually didn't know came up to me and said that she had read the book and she was really excited because she feels she's more compassionate, right? She feels more understanding. So she was not upset, but she didn't understand why, like when her family got together with her, I guess it was her niece or nephew that was on the spectrum, like why things had to be a certain way. Why can't we just go out at 5? Why do we have to go out at 7 or whatever it was?
Yes.
But then after reading like my book and seeing how like there's a window where we can do certain things before there's a total tantrum, she felt like now I understand it, and now I don't question it, right? Like whatever my sister-in-law or brother-in-law says, we have to do this at this time, and this is where we're going, meet us there or don't. She's like, I get it, and I'm not offended by it at all. Or I had another person tell me, and this was really nice too. She hadn't told many people that her kid was on the spectrum. And when she was out, there was a little snafu at one of these like birthday party events. And she had said to me, like before, she wouldn't have known what to say. But because I had written like this conversation that I've had in a very similar situation that she was in, she was like, I knew what to say. Like, I knew like I could just say, my kid's on the spectrum, take a minute. Can we please do it this way? It'll work out. I just need to be here to help it, get to where it needs to get, or whatever the situation is. And she was so happy because she was like, now I can like try more things because I know what to say. And like, I don't have to feel bad about it. And the other person was very receptive to that, and he was like, oh, I had no idea. But then she knew to say, it's okay. There's no way you would have known, because how would you have known? This is why I'm telling you. And those are conversations I have all the time where I'm in a situation and I'm like, hey, listen, I'm sorry that my son is behaving this way, but he's on the spectrum. And they would be like, well, I didn't know that. And I would say, well, I'm not saying you should have. I'm just saying he is. And I'm telling you now, and that's why this is happening. And I understand that you're confused. Let me explain to you. So I thought that was just so heartwarming. And like, I felt like just those two things were worth me writing it,
Yeah, that's amazing. I love when you hear that feedback too. It's so affirming, right? Because when you sit down to write, you're like, where's this going? Where's this going to end up? Who's going to be reading this? And to get that response back is great. It's really, really good, Kuri.
Thank you.
Amazing. So the book is available on your website. I can see I have your website up on the screen here as we're chatting. Yay. So I'm searching through and checking everything. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's available everywhere. Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I don't know where people buy online books these days, but you can, if you're in DC, you can get it at Politics and Prose.
Oh, there you go. Shout out DC.
But so it's available anywhere you can buy online books. And, when I first told my son, like, I was like, hey, listen, I was thinking of writing a book about us. And he was like, nope, I don't want you to do it. And I was like, no, dude, like, he's like, well, why do you want to do it? Like, why would you want to write a book, first of all? Because then people are going to have to read it. And why would you ever make people read? That's awful. But like, why would you want to do it? And I said, well, the goal is like, I want everybody to know about the spectrum. And I want them to know that it's like, not a big deal sometimes, it's not like the end of the world. And I feel like the more people know about it, the more people will become more understanding and nicer. So he was like, he latched onto that, right? He was like, are people going to be nicer to me? Please write this book, Mom.
There you go.
Great.
That's great. That's amazing. So Kuri, thank you so much for spending time with us. Yeah. We want people to go to the website. We'll put all the links obviously in the show notes for everyone.
Yeah, and reach out to me. Like if you have any questions, concerns, or whatever, talk to me. I'm
a real mom. A real mom.
No, like just a mom.
Just a mom.
Just a mom. Just a mom. See, my house is a mess. I have to shut doors.
Yeah. No, it's really good, Kuri. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Yeah.
You sent me a copy of the book. I'm so grateful. I'm working my way through it. It's just great to spend time with you, learn a little bit more about your story, and the story behind the story is always great as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's, my goal is to spread awareness and make sure that, everybody knows that it's okay to be friends with the kid on the spectrum. It's okay to say the autism word, it's okay. It's not scary.
And Sushi is your friend.
Correct.
Let's remember that as well.
All right.
Thanks, Kuri.
Thanks.
Hi, guys. This is Dave from Living the Next Chapter, a podcast designed to connect authors and audiences. We're always on the lookout for our next interview. If you're an author, a publisher, and you have a book, whether you're just starting, whether you're halfway through writing, or it's all done and you want to tell the world, that's why we're here at Living the Next Chapter. Get in touch with us through livingthenextchapter.com, contact us, and let's set up some time together to discuss your book, to discuss your project, and how we can get you on the show. My name is Dave, and I would love to speak to you. So go to livingthenextchapter.com, and let's get over there together and discuss all the great things that you're up to as an author, as a publisher, and let's grow your audience together. Join us on livingthenextchapter.com for great authors and an audience that's eager to hear about what you're up to as an author and a publisher. Contact us today and let's get your book out in front of others. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.
Mindshift Power Podcast, the podcast for teenagers and those who work with them. There's a huge problem in America today. There's a very large disconnect between teenagers and the adults who work with them. I'm looking to bridge that gap with real, raw, honest conversation, not held back by the chains of political correctness. You cannot solve a problem you do not understand. Want to understand teenagers today? Listen to this podcast. This podcast is for teens in the U.S. and Canada. To learn more, go to fatimabay.com/podcast or just look for Mindshift Power Podcast on any listening platform. I look forward to you being a faithful listener.